the FNS-9 and the FN-509. What's different? Let's find out. Similarities and differences between the FNS-9, which is on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry. The FNS-9 is on the right, and the FN-509 on the left. These two guns, by many appearances, seem to be identical. However, on closer examination, you can see some subtle differences and some fairly significant differences. Let's take a look as we move slowly from the front back. So here's the muzzle end, and this is just the frame of the gun. The slide has been removed. So we get now to the locking block area, and you can see, number one, the locking block for the FNS-9 is much longer than for the FN-509. Slight different configuration with the takedown mechanism and the locking block, but essentially very, very similar. Again, we're just longer on the FNS-9. And your rails are longer too, so let me show you that. Just go this way, side by side. You can see the actual contact part with the slide is right here on the FN-509, and the FNS-9 much longer. In fact, I'm going to have to push it forward a little bit to show you the whole thing. There we go. Now we got it all in frame. So you can see it looks like it's about 5 times longer. So you've got more contact with the slide. Arguably you have a tighter fit, and more importantly the slide should track more true as it runs backward and forward again. So now we continue to move back past our locking block, and now I'm going to tilt forward a little bit. You can see some differences in the areas of the locking block where we make contact with the barrel lug. Just a different design. Nothing positive or negative to say either way. And moving a little bit forward, now this is where things get a little interesting to the eye. And again, I'm trying to keep these pistols identically oriented side by side because the frames are identical size. So you're looking here at the upper portion, the inside portion of the trigger, right in here and right in here. So this is the FNS-9, and this is the trigger safety, and the FN-509, and there's the trigger safety. Look at the difference. Look how much heavier and beefier it is. It's also slightly less complex. Now let me see if I can work the two. I'll probably have to do this separately, but let me see if I can work the two for you. Okay, so the FNS-9 on the right, you see now it is on safe. Just disengage the trigger safety and move the trigger the rest of the way back. Okay, now FN-509, same scenario, but just look at the difference in the parts. So we disengage the trigger safety, and look at that big piece of polymer coming up. And now we move the full trigger back. So it looks like they just really kind of beefed it up a little bit. Design looks very similar. Another thing you may notice here is, let me get these two side by side again. The catch for the follower in the magazine that acts as our slide stop mechanism is differently designed. In fact, it's oriented almost in the inverse of each other. So this is the FNS-9, and you can see that it's straight and flat at the front and curved toward the back. It's got a kind of double curve going on there. But then on the FN-509, it's straighter and flatter toward the back with the curve, but it's just really just a single angle toward the front. So a different type of design with the slide stop. And moving back, the actual slide stop controls, you can see that it's a little wider on the FN-509, but other than that, they're very, very similar. Okay, coming back still further, we see the ejectors. The two ejectors are very similar. I don't think they're the same part. They don't look interchangeable, but so here's the ejector for the FNS-9, and here's the ejector for the FN-509. And again, FNS-9 ejector looks like it's a little bit thicker, and it's oriented a little tiny bit more vertical. This one seems to have a little more of a bend to it, and a slightly thinner material. I'm talking, a couple thousandths probably. All right, now the triggers, the fire control groups in the rear, look to be virtually identical. That spring might be different, but otherwise, and I'm talking about this spring right here. This spring to this spring may be different, and it may not. But they look virtually identical. I don't see any difference in the design. And that does look like it's almost the exact same drop-in part. So the rear portion of the fire control group looks to be just about identical and may even be interchangeable. However, the front, there are some significant changes and differences. What does all this mean? Absolutely nothing. Well, I'm sure it doesn't mean nothing. I'm sure they didn't change it for nothing, but it means nothing to me. I just find it interesting, and I like to see what's different. Okay, same type of view for the slides. They are fully assembled slides with the barrels and the recoil spring and guide rod in them. But I have them lined up side by side, and they are the exact same length, and I've got them lined up together lengthwise. You can see there at the end of the barrel, and as we start to push back, so you can see number one difference is FNS-9, a lot less metal here at the end of the guide rod, a lot more going on right there with the FN-509. There's some difference in design too, in the cuts in the slide, but the overall thickness is the same. Now as we push back, you can start to notice right here, FNS-9 uses a straight spring. It's a flat spring, flat wire spring, and a single guide rod. The FN-509 uses a dual recoil spring with a telescoping guide rod system. Something we're seeing more and more. This has become very common. Okay, so as we move back, you can see now back end of the guide rod and recoil spring assembly where it connects to the barrel lug. Now, again, I'm keeping these two slides exactly even head to toe. So as I push forward now and bring the barrel lug and feed ramp, which is of course upside down, into view, you can see that there is a little difference. If we go straight across from the FNS-9 on the right, which is the stainless one, that's probably the easiest way to identify it, but if I sort of use this pointer and go straight across, you can see there is a difference in the length of the plate, the area where that sits. So the barrel lug, slightly different fit. And the ramp looks like it winds up in just about the same place, but straight bottom here and a curved bottom here. Again, what does all this mean? I don't know. I just like to see what's different. Now these parts are configured differently as well in shape, but pretty subtle. And then when we get down to the back and you see the exposed portion of our striker assembly, looks like you've got a little less metal here, a little less of a collar there, but otherwise very similar, and the striker spring and everything looks to be very, very similar. That might be an interchangeable part inside, but this part is obviously different. And the firing pin safety block looks like it might be an interchangeable part, so we may have identified one of the few interchangeable parts here in the slide. There and there. I don't see any difference at all between those two. Let's give you the wider look. Kind of get your bearings on where we were in the close-ups, but FNS-9 is the stainless on top now, FN-509 on the bottom. Slides are exactly the same size in dimensions overall, but there are some differences in the cuts and there are some differences in the parts inside them. Now the magazines for the FNS-9 and the FN-509 also at first glance look very, very similar and in many ways identical, and you would think at first, oh yippee, maybe I get extra magazines by virtue of being able to interchange them. No, you can't. Sorry. The reason physically why you can't interchange them is the base plate. The base plates will not allow one magazine to go into the other gun and vice versa. But the real reason goes back to, remember when we looked at the part in the frame, in the slide stop that interacts with the follower, and those were designed differently. And the followers, while they also at first glance look to be identical, they are not. FNS-9 has a little notch right in here where that tab in the slide stop is going to catch. FN-509 has no such notch. It's a different design. And so the followers are designed differently. The slide stop mechanism in the gun is designed differently, and therefore, because of that small difference, and only that small difference as far as I'm able to see, the magazines are not interchangeable. But quick addition to the story here is I did receive my 3 free magazines for the FN-509 already. It took about, I want to say, less than a month. So good job, FN, getting those right out. And hopefully you guys are able to, those of you who are interested in having a 509, were able to get one, take advantage of that deal, because 3 magazines, nothing to sneeze at. Wow, thanks for hanging in there through all that really boring and dry information from the workbench. But I'm hoping that if you are really interested in what is the difference between these two guns, that'll help. And maybe if not, you fast forwarded through that and got to the shooting part. Either way, welcome to the shooting part. I'm going to start out with the FNS-9. It's been a while since I've shot it, so let me just remind myself how it feels.
Feels good. Very nice trigger on the FN pistols. It is a jointed trigger. It articulates in the center, but a little different than the Smith & Wesson approach. It is a very crisp and pleasant trigger to shoot. Now the FN-509, and I've only shot this one once before. That was when I did my first 100 with it. So it's been a little while. Okay, so here's a piece of information for you. This is why we make videos and why we watch them. Completely unplanned accident. I grabbed the 509 magazine and I just shot it through the FNS-9. You saw me do it. But you cannot go the other way, because I just tried to pick up the FNS-9 magazine and seat it in the 509. So, the FN-509 magazine will function in the FNS-9. Now that's actually pretty good news, because I took advantage of that offer that FN had going and I got 3 free magazines. So I have like a total of 5 of these, and now that gives me a total of 7 that'll work in this gun. So luckily I have another loaded magazine for the 509. I haven't shot this one since I did my first 100. Let me refresh my memory what I think about this one. That little steel target you see at 10 yards downrange was provided by Tactical AR 500 targets. It is, in my opinion, one of the very best targets you can get. I love, love, love their products. If you look down in the description below this video, you will find the link to their website, and you'll find a discount code where you can save 10% off anything you buy. Definitely take advantage of that. Okay, back to the FNS-9. I have a Talon grip on the FNS-9. I also have a Talon grip on the FN-509. Both of the FN pistols come with these big, gnarly off-road tire type tread patterns on their grips. I don't find that to be particularly comfortable, so a rubberized Talon grip was a no-brainer for me. In my opinion, I think the FNS-9, this gun, is the superior pistol. I think it's a higher end model than the 509. But my opinion of the 509 has altered itself a little bit. And I'll talk about that in a sec when I'm shooting it. So I have a lot of rounds through this gun, the FNS-9, and I like it. Good sight picture. It's a 3-dot sight picture with good anti-glare serrations on the rear sight. They are not night sights, but a good sight picture. I like the trigger a lot, and I like the general ergonomics quite a bit. It's a very comfortable gun to shoot. It is ambidextrous in terms of the slide stop, slide release, and ambidextrous in terms of the magazine release, which works very, very well. Now that'll take me to one of the complaints I had initially with the 509. When I first shot the 509, I had a tough time with the magazine release for right-handers, the one on this side of the pistol. It was very tight and the magazines did not drop very well. That feels better today than it did then. I've played with it in the dry fire a lot since, and I've probably started to break that control in. So the spring, probably a little too tight maybe, and there's also a contributing factor in that on this pistol, FN has put sort of you can see a molded polymer guard around the control that's not present on the FNS-9. In fact, the FNS-9, the button actually sticks out a little bit more. It's a little more rounded and it doesn't have this protective guard. So this means your thumb has to be a little more precise on the button. That's part of it. The other part was it was just really stiff. But it seems to be loosening up. The sight picture is good on this pistol too, but the sights on the FNS-9 are better in my opinion. These are glow-in-the-dark sights, meaning if they're charged with ambient light, they will glow in darkness for a time. But they are not night sights. They don't contain any tritium. I also like the trigger in this gun. Trigger is, for all intents and purposes, the same trigger. We saw that in the detailed close-ups. Okay. Also ambidextrous controls here, slide stop, slide release, and mag catch. So, this is working a lot better than it did initially. You just have to be a little more precise because of that guard around it. You can't really use the flat of your thumb. You have to sort of curl your thumb in and use the point of it. But if you do that, it's dropping pretty good. So why is there a 509 since we already had the FNS-9? I still haven't come to a real conclusion myself on that. I think they're saving money on a less expensive production on the 509. I think it's a cheaper pistol to make. And I think they're able to offer it at a more competitive price. I don't really see the point for it, but it's a nice gun. And I always see the point for a nice gun, so I guess I do see the point for it. All right, let's finish up with the 509. It's a nice pistol, and if you can save a lot of money on this one versus the FNS-9, and that's something that's an important consideration, then you should do it. If you got your choice of either one, and money's not really a factor, the FNS-9 is a better gun.